למען ציון לא אחשה, ולמען ירושלים לא אשקוט.
You are listening to Hebrew Voices with Nehemia Gordon. Thank you for supporting Nehemia's Makor Hebrew Foundation. Learn more at nehemiaswall.com.
My guest today is a native Hebrew-speaking Jewish Israeli who says, quote, "The Jews prayed for the Messiah to come, and when he finally came, they didn't accept him." He believes his faith contains the most important message mankind ever received. He also believes that Yahweh sent a man named Yeshua of Nazareth to bring good news to the world, and that Elohim is a plural noun. He belongs to a movement that wants to build the third temple. They don't believe in evolution. His name is Kobi Drori, and I'm speaking to him today at his home in Petach Tikva, Israel. Shalom, Kobi.
Shalom, Nehemia.
Some of you might be thinking that Kobi is a Messianic Jew, and that's sort of true, but not in the sense that you're thinking. You see, Kobi is the official spokesman for the Raëlians in Israel, which he described as a, quote, secularist Jewish movement. The Raëlians believe that Yahweh was a 25,000-year-old extraterrestrial who appeared to a French journalist named Claude Vorilhon, I may be mispronouncing that name, in 1973. According to Vorilhon, also known as Raël, Yahweh revealed himself to be the head of a team of extraterrestrial scientists who created all life on Earth. Now, you might be thinking Kobi's a complete nut job, but he truly is an authentic Hebrew voice. In fact, he doesn't even speak English, so I'm going to do something I've never done before. I'm going to interview Kobi in Hebrew and then have a voiceover read an English translation of what he said. This is basically what the BBC does. Now, he asked that he have the opportunity to verify the translation before you hear it. So when you hear the English translation of his words, that translation has been checked and approved by an English speaker on Kobi's behalf, and then someone is going to read it for us. So, Shalom, Kobi.
Shalom, Nehemia.
I went to your meeting yesterday in Tel Aviv. It was at Dizengoff Center in the heart of Tel Aviv, and it was the monthly meeting of the Raëlians. And I understand this may be one of the last, if not the last, Raëlian meeting in Israel, and we'll talk about that. But what made me decide to reach out and contact you is I was walking down Rachel Imenu Street in Jerusalem, and I walked by the International Christian Embassy, and I remembered I had heard years before that there was some other religion in the world, one other religion in the world that had an embassy or wanted to build an embassy in Jerusalem, because usually it's countries that have embassies, not religions. And I didn't know what it was, and I went and I looked it up, and I found out there was this thing called Raëlians after this man named Raël, Claude Vorilhon. So what is it that you guys believe?
למעשה, זה לא קשור לאמונה, אלא קשור להבנה.
Actually, it's not connected to belief, but to understanding. We understand and know after we checked and investigated and compared all the possible religious sources, all the ancient scriptures, that this message can be nothing but true. The message is that all the ancient scriptures in the world, and especially the Hebrew Bible, speak about people who came from the sky many, many years ago. Through genetic engineering and perfect knowledge of the understanding of DNA, they created all life on planet Earth, starting with small bacteria, fish and mammals. Eventually, they create man in their image, exactly as it's written in Genesis.
So you don't believe in evolution. You believe, or you know, as you say, or you understand from your investigation, and what was revealed to Claude Vorilhon, known as Raël, is that there were these, and you don't like the word alien, you prefer the word extraterrestrial. So the extraterrestrial scientists, they're the ones, there's no evolution. They're the ones who created in laboratories all life on Earth, according to your belief, your faith.
Correct. And afterwards, they brought their artists who added colors and shapes. They created all this wonderful life that we have on this planet. Just look, with some sense of humor, look at nature. They were very talented people. When the religious Jew, and maybe even the religious Christian, says grace before his meal, this is the right thing to do. Just like when you go to dinner and at the end of the meal, bless your host for the tasty food she made you. It's the same thing. Every apple, every fruit was created by a team of talented scientists who did it the best way.
So tell us about the encounter. Who was Claude Vorilhon? Well, before we get to Raël, who are you? You were born here in Israel, am I correct?
Correct. I was born in Israel in 1953. I'll soon be 63.
I got to tell you, these Raëlians, they look so young.
Thank you. From a very young age, I asked questions. Where did we come from? Where are we going? What are we doing here anyway? I sought answers in all the possible places. When the first books of Erich von Daniken arrived, I was 16 years old. I jumped on it like someone finding a great treasure. I thought, wow, this is 100% true. But I left it. I continued to investigate Kabbalah and knowledge from Hawaii, the Huna, all kinds of knowledge, but I didn't get the answers. On the way, I studied psychology. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology, behavioral sciences. Afterwards, I studied business management. Today, I'm a lecturer on all kinds of fields that I developed. That's what I do today. 16 years ago, I suddenly found a book that had 2 sentences on the cover, which were exactly the opposite of what I believed. No supernatural God, no evolution, the truth about our origins.
So you believe in God, or no, that's not correct. You believe in Elohim, and you're a native Hebrew speaker. So this isn't a translation issue, but you believe that the word Elohim means
those who came from the sky.
Those who came from the sky. So it doesn't mean gods or God. No. And when you understand Elohim to be plural. In other words, there were multiple.
In the Bible, in the original Bible, there is no God. No God in the original Bible. In the original Bible, which is in Hebrew, there is only Elohim, and it is a plural word.
And you read the Bible in Hebrew. You're not reading in translation.
No, I'm reading. I'm lucky to read it in Hebrew, in the original language.
Wow.
And that's why I can understand what the Bible is talking about. Sorry for my English, for my bad English.
No, that's fine. But his English is great. I'm going to try to get the guy to speak in English the rest of the time. It's perfect. So, look, I read the Bible in Hebrew and I read Elohim, and I have a different understanding than you, but people have heard my position on Elohim. For example, it says Elohim bara, he created, rather than baru, they created. And would you say that that's because they misunderstood the ancients, the concept of Elohim? I think you had said that in one of your explanations. Or in one of the videos, it talks about how you mankind, you thought we were gods, and actually we were just people who came from the sky. Is that?
Right. In actuality, the first humans lived with them. They knew exactly who they were. But when the Elohim explained to the humans what they did here, for example, they explained that many years before they landed on planet Earth, they put satellites to revolve around the Earth to check the air and the land. The humans couldn't understand this, so they wrote, "And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters." They told the humans that they checked the solar radiation to make sure it wouldn't cause damage, and the humans wrote, "And God saw the light, that it was good," and other distortions, because primitive people use their dialect to describe technological things. When thousands of years pass, people don't know what the source was and start to say, "That's what they meant." What do they say to that sage? "You're right." Then someone else says something totally different, and you're also right. If there's more than one interpretation of a verse, it's a sign that no one knows the truth.
Well, okay. Let's go back to the creation of mankind, which you told me that when it talks about the snake in the garden, that's actually a metaphor, and it refers to actually a team of scientists. Tell us about that. Who are those team of scientists, and who is their head?
On planet Earth, 7 giant laboratories were set up. In the area of Israel, there was also a laboratory that was on the Temple Mount. The first lab was on the Temple Mount. The team that worked there was called the Snake Team. They were apparently the most talented team, and when they created the human model, they created the most sophisticated model. From time to time, they would meet and would hold competitions. Who created the most beautiful fish? Who created the most beautiful bird? One day, they decided to create human beings, even though it was forbidden to create human beings. But it's impossible to stop science. Scientists move forward.
So the Snake Team, they were defying the will of Yahweh, who is in charge of all the scientists. They were defying, they were going against the will of Yahweh. Is that what you believe?
Yahweh was actually the president of the planet of the Eternals.
That's not this planet, it's a different planet.
Yes, their planet.
Oh, their planet. Okay.
And yes, when it was already an established fact that the scientists created human beings, there was nothing that could be done. They were alarmed on the planet of the Eternals that human beings were created here. Furthermore, they created human beings with brains a little larger than theirs, more developed.
Wait, so we're smarter than the gods, than Elohim? Or potentially we are?
In potential, yes.
For a scientist, it's not a great challenge to make something just like himself. He can, with genetic engineering, even create Superman. But it's dangerous, because one day he might stomp on you.
Therefore, they made something slightly better than them. They even tell us, you can get further than us in science. You have a larger capacity.
But where do they say that? You said they say that.
In our book.
Oh, okay. So that was one of the things revealed to Claude Vorilhon. Let's go back to that. So Claude Vorilhon, from what I understand, was a race car driver in southern France, and then he had a magazine related to racing, and he's driving around, minding his own business in southern France, near volcanoes. What happens?
I can start a little before that. As a child, he grew up in Catholic dormitories. He didn't want to study anything. It's important for me to explain his background so that you understand, at the age of 26, this man publishes a book that has knowledge about all the ancient scriptures, of all the religions, about physics, genetic engineering, futurism, education, psychology. This knowledge couldn't have come from a man like this. You have to understand his background. I don't have time to explain. If you want, you can download the book in any language from the website www.rael.org.
And we'll also post these links on nehemiaswall.com, on my website, along with there's a video that, if we have time, we'll talk about, that we'll post a link to, and actually a recent decree that we'll post the link to from Raël, or from Yahweh himself, according to Raël. All right, so he's growing up, and he doesn't have the ability to know this information. And
one word about the snake team.
Sure.
I want to finish talking about the snake team. When human beings were a fact on planet Earth, an order was given by the government of the planet of the Eternals not to transmit scientific knowledge to them, or how is it expressed through the metaphorical language in the Hebrew Bible? From all the books we have in the library you may read, but not from the books of knowledge. From every tree in the Garden of Eden you may eat, just not from the tree of knowledge.
So to eat from a tree is actually to read a book, according to...
It was knowledge. Okay. Only knowledge.
And what did the snake say to human beings? The moment that you eat from the tree of knowledge, and ye shall be as Elohim.
The only thing that differentiates between us and the Elohim is scientific knowledge.
And that's interesting. So one of the things that you said in the talk yesterday that I went to, or maybe it was in the video, I don't know, is one of the central ideas of Raëlianism. Is it Raëlianism or Raëlism? Whatever it is, of the Raël movement or religion, is to spiritualize science. Would you say that? I think that was a term they actually used, to spiritualize science and to demythologize God. I think I heard that in your video.
Oh, really? It could be.
Spiritualized science, I definitely heard because I wrote it down.
I read the Hebrew subtitles, so I don't notice the English. By the way, the one speaking there is a scientist himself. Dr. Marcus Wenner is a psychoneuroimmunologist.
And if you can give us that video, we'll post that, or we'll post a link to it on the website as well.
Yes, I'll definitely give it. What we say is that science must come from energy that is called love. When science comes without love, it creates the atom bomb. When science comes with love, it produces food for everyone. It eradicates all disease.
And there's actually part of your understanding is that on August 6, 1945, they dropped the first atomic bomb in Hiroshima. And that's when the people on this other planet, the Elohim, decided it's time to send a new revelation to the world. And that new revelation came on December 13th, 1973, to this man who had grown up in the Catholic schools. And Claude Vorilhon, tell us about this experience,
They decided to send another messenger. He was created in 1945 and was born on September the 30th, 1946. On that wintry day, December 13, instead of going to his office, he suddenly felt an intense impulse to go somewhere else. He doesn't understand why. He has a desk full of work. He travels to a desolate place in France called Puy de la Salas. He knows the place well from the summer, but he'd never been there in winter. He gets out of the car and starts walking. He thinks maybe he wants to hike there. When he wants to return, he suddenly sees a light in the sky, a flashing light, and something that looks like a helicopter, but without any noise. He suddenly sees a low-flying object, and he understands he's about to see a UFO. He always dreamed of seeing a UFO, but never believed it would happen to him. Suddenly, when it lands close to him, he realizes it's about to happen. Suddenly, stairs open from the bottom of the bell. It's in the shape of a bell. He understands something is about to come out. He says to himself, I'll wait to see. To run? Not to run? I'll wait. If he's holding a weapon, I'll run. If he doesn't have anything, I'll wait to meet him. He comes out and he sees a pair of legs. He understands that something is about to come out that looks like a human being. What initially looked like a child, when he comes close, he realizes it's an adult man, just short, about 1.2 or 1.25 meters. In order to see if he can even hear, he says, "Hello." The extraterrestrial responds in fluent French. He's astonished. Then, like a journalist, he starts to interview him. "Where are you from?"
And at this point, he was a journalist that had the racing magazine. Is that right? Okay.
He asks him, "Where did you come from?" The extraterrestrial says, "From very far away." "What did you come to do today?" "I came to meet you, Claude Vorilhon." "You are married, 26 years old. You have 2 children." He makes him understand that he knows him well. "I chose you for a very important mission." Then he invites him into the spaceship.
Wow. So, and then he revealed to him, and look, there's a whole book of the thing. There's 5 books of the things that were revealed according to the Raëlians to Claude Vorilhon, and we'll have a link to their website. And you can download these books for free, is that right?
Correct. Okay. We're a non-profit movement. What didn't cost us money, we give for free.
So I'm going to refer people to that. We're trying to do this in a relatively short period of time, partly because I have to translate all of it into English. But also, we're trying to keep the show, to about 30 to 45 minutes. Good luck, Nehemia. So I want to ask you about, I go over sometimes. So I want to ask you about something that Claude Vorilhon wrote. There was a video you referred to me, and I'll post the link on nehemiaswell.com, and it's Raël. I'll call him Raël for the rest of the interview.
Yes.
So it's something that Raël said in this video. It's pretty incredible. I want to read it. So this is something that Raël says in this video. He says, "I am the Messiah, and I bring a message from the Elohim." And of course, Elohim, in your understanding, that is the people who came from the sky, the extraterrestrials. And then he says, "If the government of Israel refuses the authorization to build the 3rd temple, the embassy of the Elohim, Israel will lose this protection from the Elohim, and it means that it will be destroyed." And we'll get to the more recent message, but one of your beliefs is that the Jewish people, the people of Israel, have a special role in the world, that they were created on the Temple Mount, and they were the most beautiful model, which explains Bar Rafaeli.
There were 7 laboratories. The laboratory that was in the area of Israel created the most successful model of human. They lived in the area that today is called Israel. The sons of Elohim, as it is written in Genesis chapter 6, verse 2, had sex with the beautiful women who were in this area. This sexual union produced the smartest and most famous people of that era. You can read about it in Genesis chapter 6, in the continuation of the chapter. The Jews are the descendants of those who were born from the sexual union of the sons of Elohim with the human women.
Okay, I see. Okay.
Something that maybe shouldn't have happened, something that happened by chance.
Okay, and so back to Raël, he's saying he's the Mashiach. He created the state of Israel. Is that correct? Or according to your faith?
Helped to create the state of Israel.
So they helped create the state of Israel, and they've been giving it protection all the way from the founding of the state of Israel in 1948 up until August 6, 2015.
Yes.
And we'll talk in a minute about what happened on August 6, 2015. But you shared something absolutely fascinating at the talk yesterday. This was the meeting of the Raël movement in Israel and in Tel Aviv. And what you shared was something you said was your own research. It wasn't necessarily a message from Raël, but can you share about it? Because I didn't know this information. I was very, it was about the story of Nachman Shai on the anniversary of the Yom Kippur War. For those who don't know, the Yom Kippur War was in 1973. It was a devastating war where Israel barely survived.
Right. Like Nehemia just said, what we say is that Elohim helped establish the state of Israel and bestowed protection to the state of Israel in all the wars that took place. In all the wars that took place, anyone connected to the Israeli defense establishment knows there were miracles. The religious, of course, will say the miracles are from God. We know that these miracles were accomplished through technology. We know that the intelligence officers of the IDF who interrogated Egyptian soldiers asked them, "Why did you surrender?" The Egyptians responded, "First of all, we saw thousands of soldiers attacking us. And secondly, we saw jinn demons coming down from heaven and fighting for the Jews."
And what they call demons might be what religious Jews at least would call angels.
Okay.
But anyway, go on.
That's what they saw. They saw it. The Israeli officers said to them, "But we were a very small number of soldiers. Why did you surrender?" They said, "We saw thousands of soldiers." When I read the Quran, I suddenly find that Muhammad says there that Elohim rewarded their believers by making their enemies in battle see double. That's one thing.
And just really quick, so you believe that Muhammad was one of the messengers of Yahweh?
Absolutely.
And right now he's on that other planet along with Jesus and Buddha and Moses. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, go on with the miracles. I want to hear this part.
Okay.
And this isn't a Raëlian thing. This is something you discovered that's unknown to the people in the Israeli defense community, and that you're saying here's the application of it from the perspective of the Raëlians.
I remember when I read an article written for the 30th anniversary after the Yom Kippur War. Nachman Shai wrote the article, and he said as follows.
And let me just tell people, Nachman Shai was...
Member of the Knesset.
He's a member of the Knesset today. I remember him in 1990 when the Iraqis were firing rockets at us, and we would turn on the radio, and Nachman Shai would come on and tell us you should put on the gas masks, you should take off the gas masks, you should go in the sealed room from the poison gas, you can come out now. So he's known in Israel as, at one point he was a military spokesman, and he's a very famous reporter, and so Nachman Shai wrote on the 30th anniversary of the Yom Kippur War.
And he told the story that he was in the pit in Bir Gafgafa with all the senior generals of the Israeli army.
So that was the command and control center in Sinai.
Exactly.
And he said, all of us journalists who were there, we swore an oath to never tell what we saw there, in what state the Israeli generals were. It was a catastrophe. They were about to surrender. And I don't want to say anything beyond that. The only way we won the war, and I'm not a religious man, he said, is that there was absolutely a miracle here. You have to also look at the Syrians. Nothing stopped the Syrians from reaching Haifa. The Savika force, Kalahani with another tank and a half. This isn't what stopped the Syrians. What stopped the Syrians? In my opinion, a sort of other technology that operated through the brain.
And those people who have read my book, Shattering the Conspiracy of Silence, and the Open Door series, I actually talk about, there is a testimony from a Syrian commander that he saw a line of white angels and a hand came down from heaven and said, stop. So in my faith, in my understanding, that was angels that I call him Yehovah, that he sent. And in my view, of course, Yehovah is a supernatural being. But in your understanding, Yahweh or Yahweh is an extraterrestrial who used technology to control the minds of the Syrians.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. And look, this is Hebrew Voices. We're hearing different perspectives. And, I see things one way. You're a native-born Israeli, and you served in the Israeli army, right? And you were telling me your son served in the Israeli military, even when in the context of being a Raëlian, who are pacifists. So can you just really briefly tell us about that?
On the table in my home, there was a Quran, a New Testament, a Hebrew Bible, and our book, The Truth About Elohim. My children could read everything. They read it all. And one day they decided on their own to join. When my son was young, he joined the Israeli army. He asked to serve without a weapon.
And you can do that in the Israeli army? You can serve without weapons?
Yes, you can. So they sent him to a communications course in the Israeli Air Force. He was in a type of communications, operating communications equipment in the Air Force. But he was without a weapon.
I understand. Well, and that's has been up till now permissible in the Raëlian movement, meaning okay. And then now let's get to August 6th, 2015. So the Elohim, according to your understanding, they're doing these miracles, what I call miracles in the Yom Kippur War. They're intervening, they're giving protection, and there's a new revelation now from Raël, or maybe, would you call it a revelation? What do you call it? A message he received?
Message. Telepathic message.
He received a telepathic message according to the Raëlians?
He's getting telepathic message.
Okay, and let me read from the new telepathic message and ask you to comment on it. Actually, the first thing here is an introduction by I think he's a rabbi in Canada. Is that right? Malul or something?
Leon Malul.
And who is he?
He's a Jewish. He born in Morocco. He immigrated to Canada and then to Israel. He was
He's responsible for the Middle East. Today, he's the head guide for the Middle East.
And שהוא גם Grand Rabbi of the Raëlian movement.
Okay, the Grand Rabbi of the Raëlian movement. He's the head guide guy that's Madrich
of
the Middle East. And he wrote, on the 6th of August, 2015, through the mouth of his son, the Mashiach Raël, Yahweh announced that henceforth he has withdrawn the protection that he had granted to Israel. And I'm going to post a link to this. This is me reading from what this head rabbi of the Raëlian movement wrote. And he goes on, the message of the Mashiach Raël, the last prophet, and our request for the embassy have been treated with contempt. So let's stop there. What is the embassy? This is what got me interested in the first place.
The Elohim helped establish the state of Israel for one reason. The Jews were given a very, very important role: to reveal and tell the entire world who the Elohim are, and one day to establish for them a landing site, an embassy with extraterritorial status like any embassy, to receive them with the appropriate dignity due to creators, not as would be given to supernatural gods. This is why they're requesting the embassy, which in Jewish tradition is called the Third Temple.
So you want the Third Temple to be this landing pad for the extraterrestrials.
The First Temple was also for them. King Solomon, when he finishes building the First Temple, he says to Yahweh, "You wanted to dwell in the cloud, in the mist, and I built for you a house to dwell in." The temple was dictated precisely how to build it. Also, Yahweh spoke to Ezekiel, and he points to the east gate and says to him, "This gate will always be closed." This is the gate that only Yahweh Elohim will enter. They had a gate that led to... It is also written in the Hebrew Bible that the president ate bread with Elohim, meaning this is speaking about people. Moses also spoke with Elohim.
Meaning the Elohim are people.
Yes.
You have some verses here. Could you read them? We love verses in this program.
Yes.
You can read them in Hebrew. I'll translate them.
First of all, if you want to know who Yahweh is, in Exodus 15, verse 3, it is written that Yahweh is a man. It isn't written that he is a god. What kind of man? A man of war. Yahweh is his name. If he is God, why does he have to fight? He really is a man. He also says to Moses in Exodus 33, verse 11, "And Yahweh spoke to Moses face to face, as a man speaks to his fellow," meaning it's not enough that they say he speaks face to face. In order that you'll understand, he adds a further sentence, "like a man speaks to his friend," meaning he speaks to him face to face. A spirit doesn't speak in this manner.
Certainly Judaism today understands this to be metaphorical. And, I think you mentioned yesterday it was Maimonides who made that big shift. I remember when I was a kid, my father was a rabbi, and one day we were studying Maimonides, and we came to this passage where Maimonides speaks about that fool who says that God has a body. And my father explained he was referring to Rashi. There's a famous passage in Maimonides.
The faith of the Jews for thousands of years, as the prophets wrote, as the sages of the Mishnah and Talmud, that Elohim has a completely physical body. The only one who changes it was Maimonides in the 13th century. Then he said, he has no image, he has no likeness. He made a revolution in Judaism. The rabbis burned the books of the Maimonides and banned him for 200 years for daring to change the Jewish faith.
Bring us a few more verses.
For example, religious Judaism say, "Where is Elohim? He's omnipresent." Rather embarrassingly, the Hebrew Bible says the opposite. In Isaiah 13 it is written, "They come from a distant land, from the end of the heavens, Yahweh and the weapons of his indignation." Meaning, he's not from here, he's coming from the ends of heaven. Someone coming from the ends of heaven isn't omnipresent.
Of course, I would say it's a metaphor, but, okay.
So many metaphors.
Well, it's interesting. You say the snake is a metaphor, and I say it's literal. And when it comes to what's called the anthropomorphisms, I say it's literal, and you say it's a metaphor. And look, this is Hebrew Voices. Go on, read us some more verses.
I didn't say it's a metaphor. It was only the name of this team. And
no, but I believe there was an actual snake that had scales. You don't believe that, right?
When the snake team was punished according to the Hebrew Bible, I called something else a metaphor. They said to him, "You shall crawl on your stomach."
And that's a metaphor. You can't take off from the planet, right?
Yes.
Okay.
You can go back.
Yeah. And I think it was a snake with legs that had a crawl in its stomach. Okay. So in other words, that's really interesting. There are things that I say are metaphor and you say are literal, and there's things that are the opposite. And that's actually interesting because, my interaction with a lot of different perspectives will be around that issue. What do you take literal? What do you take metaphorically? And then also what's emphasized by different groups. And you're clearly emphasizing the things that I would understand. But bring us some more.
You use your own logic to analyze these verses.
Amen. I agree with that.
Another example. When Elohim in the Hebrew Bible wants to get from place to place, he takes some sort of flying vehicle.
That's like riding on the clouds, and that's, in Psalms.
This appears in many places, and then it's clear he's not omnipresent. In Exodus 16, verse 9, and Yahweh said to Moses, "Behold, I'm coming to you in a thick cloud." That's one verse. There's a more interesting verse in Isaiah 19, verse 1. An oracle concerning Egypt. See, Yahweh is riding on a swift cloud and comes to Egypt.
And that's a spaceship, according to your understanding.
Of course, because
for humans, the only thing in the sky that moved was clouds. They saw that a regular cloud flies slowly. The cloud of Yahweh flies fast. So what is the conclusion of a smart person? It shows it's a swift cloud.
It's really interesting, and just as a side point, I know a lot of Christians, when they talk about the book of Revelation, there's description. I think it's descriptions of like locusts, and they say, well, that's helicopters. When John of Patmos saw the vision, he didn't know what a helicopter was, so he called it a locust. And you're saying it's a similar sort of thing. They were interpreting it through their primitive view, things that today you can explain scientifically.
John was also taken to a spaceship of one of the creators.
This is John of Patmos in the book of Revelation.
Yes. Okay. And they show him on the television what will be in the future. Mm-hmm. And he saw helicopters, he saw airplanes, and etc.
And my point is that there's like mainstream Christians who will say, of course, the locust is a helicopter. Well, it's like a hidden helicopter or something, or an Apache. What else could it be? And it's interesting because when they apply that logic to these other things, you're coming up with some really interesting things. I want to talk about this all night, but we don't have time, so I'm going to jump back to this recent message, you call it, of Raël. And actually, the way the message is worded in the link that you sent me isn't even as a message from Raël. It's worded as a message from Yahweh himself. It starts out, it says, new message from the Elohim to the Jewish people. This is specifically for the Jews. If you're not Jewish, you can stop listening. August 6, 2015, and it says here, the 21st of Av, 5775. I, Yahweh, through the mouth of my son and prophet Raël, am addressing this message to the Jewish people. The protection that had been granted to Israel is from today. And look, I'm not reading the whole thing, guys. If you want to know the context, I'm always about the context. Go read the whole context. There's a lot here I'm not reading. There's all kinds of issues we can go into. I'm just reading part of it. He says, the protection that had been granted to Israel is from today totally withdrawn. And I ask to all the real Jews to leave the land of Palestine as quickly as possible. We could spend the rest of the time talking about Palestine. I'm going to ask you that we don't talk about that. We had provided this protection in the hope that the construction of the embassy, the third temple of the old writings where we would have returned, etc. He goes on. I mean, look, I'm only reading part of it. Mm-hmm. We're running out of time. Our protection is now ended, and the real Jews are again condemned to a new diaspora, to live among the other nations of earth. And I found out last night at your monthly meeting, you're leaving Israel. Yes. You're taking this seriously, and you're getting up and leaving. Because Yahweh in this message, according to Raël from August 6, 2015, told you, look, you got to get out. It goes on. It says about leaving as quickly as possible. Maybe I already read that part. I don't know. And you're actually doing it. And I spoke to a man last night who's one of your, I guess you'd call him leaders. I don't know what the title is. He told me the man is picking up his whole family, leaving everything and moving to Panama with his whole family. And
he's a guide also.
He's a guide. Okay. So you guys are taking, this isn't some this isn't a hobby. You take this really seriously and you're living this faith. You may not call it a faith. I call it a faith. You're living this faith with your actions. I mean, tell us about this.
Every one of us, before he entered and became a Raëlian, checked the facts well. I found that this message could only be true. Raël told us 42 years ago all kinds of very precise scientific messages that scientists laughed at when they heard about them. Suddenly, after a number of years, science discovered more and confirmed time after time things that Raël said. When it reached a certain critical mass of facts, as far as I'm concerned, I said to myself, okay, from now on, I'm willing to accept all the things I have no ability to check. After I have checked time and again, I'm also willing to accept things that I can't check. Whether he really met them, or he didn't really meet them, I decided to accept everything that Raël said. Of course, adhering to the philosophy and value of the Raëlians, which tell me, if your leader tells you to do something against your conscience, refuse to do it.
Even if the Elohim will tell you.
Even if it's Yahweh.
Even if Yahweh will tell you to do something against your conscience, refuse to do it. Wow. We are the only religious that says so.
Refuse to do it. Now, this last message, with all the difficulty and pain, I love this place, I enjoy it, I was born here.
You were born here, you've lived here longer than I've been alive.
My whole family is here, my friends are here, but I know it will happen. I fulfilled my role the best I could by giving this information to everyone I know. The Raëlian movement made sure to give it to all the Israeli embassies around the world, to all the members of the Knesset, to all the members of the government, and to the Prime Minister himself.
Netanyahu has this information that I just read to you.
His assistants certainly have it.
We don't know if he read it. It was sent in his direction.
I don't know where it stopped, and I'm looking for someone who can give it to Netanyahu himself, so that he can consider on his own what to do. Maybe he can stop it. The Elohim will not do anything to harm Israel. They're only removing their protection from Israel for betraying the core values that they dictated, like thou shalt not murder, and scorning their message and messenger. Israel will be destroyed by her enemies, not by the Elohim. If Israel has to face, with the real power that it has, 1,000 Iranian rockets, 1,000 Hezbollah rockets, 1,000 Hamas rockets, and more rockets from ISIS in Sinai, and maybe a fifth column of Israeli Arabs, it's hard for me to see Israel.
And is it your understanding that sometime in, I guess before the next message on August 6, 2016, that Israel will see, I mean, this is what I understood yesterday, that Israel will cease to be a state sometime in the coming months. Is this what you understand?
Yes. Yes.
Let me just clarify that Israel will cease. What will happen to all the people in Israel? You don't know, I guess. It won't be good.
It's hard for me to think about that, but...
like this could be the next Holocaust.
Yes.
If you look at... I usually don't read. When we received this message, we went to search in every place possible. We found that rabbis are also saying the same thing.
You mean the Orthodox rabbis are saying a similar thing?
2/3 of the Jewish people will die.
Oh, so you're talking about the prophecy in the book of Zechariah, that's going to be fulfilled here. I think it's Zechariah 14, but you guys can look it up.
I don't know. They're talking about it being right after the holidays in 2015.
Wait. There's a specific prophecy in Orthodox Judaism or specific understanding?
Rabbi Chafetz Chaim said, count from the last Holocaust. He died before the Holocaust, in around 1936. He said, count 10 Shemitah cycles, and then Gog and Magog will take place.
Wait a minute. Right, so 10 Shmitot are 1945 plus...
It's now. 70 years to Hiroshima.
Somebody say, uh-oh. Oh, 70 years from Hiroshima.
Yes,
okay.
So it's now.
Wait, so, okay. Wow. All right. We could talk about this all night. I want to read the last part from the message. And remember, this is the message from August 6, 2015 that starts out, I, Yahweh. I'm going to post the link to it. It says, Raëlians are now the true Jews. Now, I want to back up there. Yeah. One of the things you told me, which was really interesting, is that if you're a Christian and you want to become a Raëlian, you have to do, I think in the English they call it an act of apostasy. Yes. And if you're a Muslim and you want to join the Raëlians, you have to do an act of apostasy. But if you're a Jew, you don't have to because it's a Jewish movement, yes, according to even Raël, I guess. Yes. And so I'm not sure I understood this, and we don't have time to analyze the whole thing. He says Raëlians are now the true Jews.
Yes, because we are the only one who recognize our creators. As they are.
Okay, we ask all Jews to leave Israel as soon as possible to convert to Raëlianism. And he mentions here Raëlian Judaism and Judaism of peace and tolerance. Again, I'm not reading the whole thing, guys. Aiming to unite all the nations within a world government. I got to tell you, that really scares me, this idea of a one world government. I'm a libertarian. I want small government, but okay, that's your view of peace. I do want a one world government under the King Messiah. I don't personally believe that's Raël, but whatever. It's not about that. And he goes on to Judaism working especially for the Third Temple, our embassy, where we will officially return, meaning that the extraterrestrials will return. So according to this, does that mean, and I'm asking, I don't know. So Judaism ceases to be, I don't know, what does this mean?
Jews will always continue to be Jews in every place, even without the state of Israel.
But now there's an idea of a true Judaism. It sounds to me like replacement theology in Christianity.
Because the Raëlians are the only people who recognize the Elohim for who they really are. The Elohim love both the Jews and the Christians because they honor them, but as supernatural beings. The Raëlians know they are human beings like us. We honor and love them like our own parents. And with the philosophy they gave us, they gave new meaning to life. The Raëlians are the only ones who recognize them. The Raëlians are the ones who, in the eyes of the Elohim, are considered the true Jews.
Well, I mean, I really want to thank you, Kobi. There's so much more we could talk about, and we're going to have to wrap it up here. There really is a lot. We're going to have some links. You guys can go read these books for free if you're interested. There's videos they got, all kinds of information. And look, there's entire aspects of this movement we didn't talk about, because I have a certain interest, which is the Bible and different beliefs and ideas. I'm just going to wrap it up with my own thoughts. Look, and one of the things that Kobi asked me to do before we do the interview, he says, you can say whatever you want, but let my words be my words. And that's why he's going to have the opportunity to check the English translation and make sure that what he says is represented correctly. But look, my view is I do believe that Yehovah, I call him Yehovah, is a supernatural being, that he's infinite, that he's always existed. And if there are extraterrestrials or aliens on other planets, they were created by Yehovah too. That's my belief. That's my faith. I know it to be true from my experience with God. I've experienced God. I think there's a really important lesson for me, which is that, look, you're a native-born Hebrew-speaking Israeli, and but you believe these things, and I because sometimes I'll be presented with somebody who says, look, you got to take this seriously, Nehemia. This doesn't come from some American who immigrated to Israel. He's a native-born Hebrew-speaking Israeli, and that's what you are, and you're an alien. The other thing is, to some people listening and hearing this, they might think this sounds like totally wacky, totally wackadoodle. And I'll be honest with you, we spoke on the phone for like an hour and a half a couple weeks ago, and I got off the phone and I thought, yeah, it sounds wacky, but not much wackier than some of the other people I speak to. And it made me wonder, and here's the challenge for my listeners. You know what this is? I'm going to just put this on myself. My challenge here is I'm going to go home and I'm going to pray and meditate tonight. What do I sound like to other people? Does my belief sound wacky? I mean, to me, I know they're all true and everybody else is wrong. But what do we sound like to other people? And I think the important thing is that we can come together and find common ground. I'll be honest, Kobi, I don't know what our common ground is, because we really have different concepts of Elohim, different concepts of Yud-He Vav-He. We both love the Bible, but we approach it really differently. But look, the one thing I think we do agree on is we both want peace. And I do believe that when Elohim comes, he will be one and he will bring peace to the world. And then we'll all know that, that Nehemia was right the whole time, or I don't know. I want to come before God, and this is a prayer I've prayed for many years. It's something King David said. And I can say it to you in Hebrew, and you'll understand it. It's from Psalm 119, verse 18. David HaMelech, King David, he prayed, Gal einai ve'abita niflaot mitoratecha. And niflaot in biblical Hebrew can also mean things that are hidden, wonderful hidden things. And this is my prayer. Yehovah, Father, creator of the universe, eternal being as I understand you to be. I don't think you have a body, Father. I think you are an infinite spirit being, and this is my understanding. But I know there's things I don't understand. I'm humble enough to come before you and know that. And I ask you to reveal the truth to me and reveal the truth to Kobi and to all those. He truly seeks you and wants to know you. Reveal your truth to all of us who come and call upon your name in truth. Amen. Thank you, Kobi.
Toda.
I want to thank an anonymous donor for sponsoring this episode of Hebrew Voices. And I want to share something with you guys. One of the things I've noticed on a number of occasions is the most interesting and best part of the entire program take place after the recorder is turned off. And, I was there in Petach Tikva with Kobi, and you just heard the episode that I recorded. When I was done recording that, he continued to talk for probably another 10 minutes. He said, I don't care if this is in the episode. I need you to see these verses. These verses prove what I believe, what he believes, that Yahweh is an extraterrestrial who came from another planet and created all life on earth. And he brought a lot of verses that, to me, they were metaphorical, allegorical. To me, most of Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel are, they're poetic style. And, a vast majority of those books are actually, in fact, metaphor and allegory and symbolic language. But he turns to me afterwards when he's done and he says, Nehemia, you know the Bible so well. How is it that you don't see this or understand it? Well, I think that speaks for itself. Shalom.
You have been listening to Hebrew Voices with Nehemia Gordon. Thank you for supporting Nehemia's Makor Hebrew Foundation. Learn more at nehemiaswall.com.